All right, guys, here we are again. Captain Dan Cullen with Elevate Yacht Management. We are at 31st Street Harbor in Chicago. We are going to be doing our weekly maintenance wash on this Sabre 48. And while we do it, I thought I'd walk you through the preventative maintenance engine room checks that we do. That's what we do every week. But aside from just them being the preventative maintenance checks that we do, this is the engine room checks, the pre-departure checks that you could be doing as a captain, as a vessel owner, before you're leaving the dock, before you are taking a trip and going underway. You want to double check some of the items that could be your points of issue or anything else during the trip. So let's walk in, and I'll walk and talk and see how we go. All right, it's a heavy door. Okay, down into the engine room of this vessel. Really large and spacious engine room. This is a beautifully clean engine room, by the way. It's a new vessel, newer vessel for this owner, and we will go through and show you what we look for. All right, so I've just shut the hatch to make it easier for the guys to do some work, continue washing the boat up there while we'll walk and talk through down here. So Volvo IPS D8 700. These are 550 horsepower engines. Got starboard engine here, and then the starboard pod. And this is the rotating pod that will twist and turn and do what you need on the when you're using the joystick, or even just the steering in gear. And then you've got your port side pod, and of course your port side engine. So walking through the items that we're going to be checking. First things first, when we get down here before a pre-departure check, we're going to want to check our oil levels. We've got a dipstick here, and then our dipstick right here as well. Sometimes they're painted white, so they blend in a little bit, but typically they're on the inside of the engines here towards the base, of course, because this is where the major oil reservoir is. So this oil dipstick actually is a really short little guy, so we're going to pop it out. First things, we'll wipe it clean. So we start with a fresh reading, and we'll see on here, I'm not sure if you can read that, but there's the little slotted lines which will show us the sensor where the reading will be. So we will, there's the max and there's the min, and we'll pull the oil and we'll see where it's at. Always keep a rag with you. This is kind of the one I use all the time with doing the engine check. So pop it out, and if you see here, it's all the way up by the max. It's not over the max, which you don't want to overfill the engines. That's actually bad for the pressure, and it'll actually cause some bubbling of the oil, which can cause air pockets and lower your PSI actually. So we will return this dipstick, plug it in nice and tight. We'll swap you over to this side. Check the starboard side dipstick. Again, we'll pull it out, clean it off, insert again all the way to the base of it. We pull it back out slowly. Don't want to make any drips, so we're gonna look here, and again, you can see it is at the max line. Again, not too far, so we're looking good there. Now, after we check the oil levels, we want to check coolant levels. Now this vessel, so got a nice little window here for us to check, and there's a min line down here, there's a max line up here, so we're looking right in the middle, a little on the higher side of 1/2, so we're looking good there. On some vessels that don't have this little window, we're gonna have to pop and twist this top. Make sure you're checking this after the engines have cooled down, because if you start open this after just getting back from a trip, it's going to be very hot in here, and the pressure is going to bubble this over. Hot coolant is going to spill everywhere. It's just a mess, and it's slightly dangerous, so don't do that. We'll check the coolant levels on this other engine, which are actually going to be all the way on the other side, so let's kind of climb around here. Okay, here we go again. Min, max, a little bit higher than that, so we're looking good there as well. Now, next thing I want to check are the sea strainers for the engines. If we focus on the engines first. So, sea strainer. One, water is coming in from the base of the boat, getting pulled in, going through a sea strainer, and then going up into the engine itself to cool the engine as she runs. Now, we can look in here, nice and clear. Not all boats will have a nice clear bell on it, so you might have to remove the housing and actually pull this metal filter out to look at it. But as we can see here, this is nice and clean. I don't see any sticks or algae or any of that stuff. So depending on where you're boating, what kind of materials are in the water floating around, seaweed or whatnot, you might be gathering that as you go, as the boat will suck it up through the water. So again, starboard side engine looks nice and clean. What we'll also do is this little lever here to open up the intake for the water is actually called the seacock. So we test it, make sure it can go close in case this hose were to pop off, or a hose anywhere pops off, we need to stop the water from coming into the vessel. We're going to check that seacock. So make sure it can close easily and open easily. That's safety wise, we just want to make sure of that. So again, got the seacock here. There we go. So closed, open, a couple times just to kind of make sure she's good there. Okay, so engine looks good. So we're also going to be checking all of the rest of the sea strainers. So the nice part is a lot of the vessels nowadays, and just in general, will have labels. So genset intake. So again, we check our the seacock to see if it's nice and turnable. It is open. This will bring the water into the generator sea strainer. Again, we're going to check inside here, nice and clean. Looks like there's a little bit of stuff on the bottom, so we can take that off, pop out the top, which is nice and easy. It's a hand twist typically. I'm going to want to close this first, and this will twist off. And we'll do this. So we'll pull this up. A little bit of junk in there. We'll take this out and clean it, just so it's all good. If we had left this open, of course, water would be coming into the boat and pouring out of there. So definitely close that. Now, this is our air conditioning sea strainer. This one is always, not always, but very often running while you're at the dock. So this one could likely get plugged up faster than most of the others, because when you're sitting at the dock, and depending on, again, the water levels and what is floating around the waters that you're docked at. So check this one often if you have issues with your water, or any non-proper flowing of your AC. Could be because of this is plugged. So we'll check this sea strainer. The seacock, it will turn off, and make sure it's turning off, turning on. We're good there. So there's a couple other strainers that we'll see throughout the boat. This is for this strainer here. It's for the freshwater washdown. So seawater washdown, I should say. This will take water into the boat through this strainer and into some hoses, so you can wash down the boat if you're fishing or out and underway and just want to clean out the boat with some sand from the beach or whatever it might be. So this looks nice and clean as well. Again, it's not used as often, so that strainer is not getting as much, at least on this vessel, not getting as much work, so potentially not as much liquid going through it. This owner is very meticulous with the engine room, which I love. You've got they call it diapers down here, which will help. They pick up oil, but they will retract water. So in case there's any water in the bilge here, it's not going to be sucking up and soaking in the water. It'll soak up the oil itself. For safety and for environmental purposes, this is a bilge pump. So water starts to fill up in here. Sometimes it does. Not the end of the world as long as your bilge pump's working. If water is going to fill in here, and then there's oil swimming around in here as well, and you're spilling oil once this bilge pump kicks on overboard, it's going to fill into the marina or harbor, ocean, lake, whatever you're in. Not a good deal. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, is very much against that. So you can get in actually pretty big trouble, some pretty big fines. So very smart to have these in your bilge. Now, another thing we'll check is the bilge pumps while we're here. So that's the actual pump itself, and back here is what they call the float switch. So this is going to actually engage if and when the water will fill up. There's a little like kind of bobber in here, and as the water fills up in here, it'll turn on, kick on the bilge pump. So we can test it. At the back, you'll see this little knobby here. We can test it, and then this turns on. We hear it running. So we know that that's working, because you want to be able to know your bilge pumps are working properly in order to help your vessel in case you do start taking on water. Now, we double check. Sometimes there's bilge pumps up underneath here, but this is forward of the boat, and she's going to run any water that might be in here will run aft, and we'll see a little water hole here, so it'll all run aft this way to that bilge pump. So this is the main one for this location here. The next thing we can check is the generator. While we're right underneath it here, we'll get to the generator. We need to check the generator oils and the coolant. So this generator Cummins Onan has two little locks on either side. So there's the one, there's the two, they both turn inward. Now, remove this cap for the generator, and we look inside. Bring my rag over here. So, this is your generator. The inside here, where we can check monthly, we'll check the impeller. Now, the dipstick is here. As I said earlier, some of the times the dipsticks are white, so they kind of blend in. You kind of have to do some looking every once in a while. Every engine room's a little different. But here's our dipstick, so we'll pull it out and we'll check it. I'm going to put the rag on the ground here so the rag doesn't drip oil anywhere. Kind of let it dabble off. Looks like we are pretty full. We'll clean it off and test again just to make sure. So seat it all the way in and pop it out. We come back and we look again, and it is nice and full, nice clean oil too. So we know this has been maintained, taken care of. Again, it's a pretty new boat, so we would expect that, we'll hope that, and we're good there. So let's put this back together. Lock it back in place so we don't have to worry about the sound cover coming off. Now the next thing we want to check is the coolant levels. So this vessel will, this generator will have it right at the top here. There's also a coolant reservoir here. Now this is just the kind of the fill over. So just if you see liquid in here or you see no liquid in here doesn't necessarily indicate what's in the actual tank. So let's test this up. You usually got to push down and it turns halfway, but now it won't unlock until you push further down and twist again. So if they're nice and full, which this one obviously is, you don't want to spill the liquid all over the engine. So put it back on, twist it down. Seat. There we go, nice and seated. Put it back on. So while we're back here, we can check, not only do we check the engine oils and coolant levels, but the drives themselves have transmission oil. We want to check that as well. Alright, so to do the transmission oil check, which is all the way at the base and the back of the unit, the back of the drive, the oil fill is here. You need a special tool because it is, some of them have a twist top, This one in particular needs just a kind of a square, so you got an extender on a little socket wrench here, so we can twist that up and out. So before I remove it, let me get my trusty rag. Let me try to not make a mess here. Hand twist the rest. Okay, so this little dipstick here will show us, kind of need to look in the light a little bit on the angle where it is. There you go, you can see it now. So it looks like it's just about halfway full. Let's test it again just to make sure. Put it in. Twist it. Let's not lock it in place. Let's twist it back up now. You look on that angle. There we go. Looks a little higher. Now it's just over half full. So we're looking good there. Wipe it back off. Put it back in. We'll check the port side in a moment. And after that, we've checked engine oil, engine coolant. Both sides, engine oil, engine coolant. We've checked the strainers for the engine, as well as the seacocks for the strainers. Generator, engine oil, generator, water intake, sea strainer, check the seacock. This is for your AC unit. Check the seacock, check the AC strainer. We're good there. We checked the generator itself here for the coolant levels, oil levels. We've checked underneath here was the bilge pump. We checked the bilge pump, that made sure that was working. We looked for any other bilge pumps that might be around. This is a high water bilge pump here, so you'll see that it's raised up from the rest of the bilge area. So this is almost an emergency bilge pump area that will kick in gear if at all needed. So you can test that, but that one won't usually immediately turn on the bilge pump like the one that's down there working. So those are the main checks that we'll do in these engine rooms before we depart for a basic trip. We're always looking for, as we're doing our preventative maintenance on these vessels, or as we're doing just pre-check as a captain, looking for anything a little goofy. You're looking for water under the engine bays, you're looking for oil or drips of something else, or splatters from somewhere that might become an issue, or might be something to kind of look further into. This vessel looks nice and clean. It's very well maintained by the owner, and you know, of course, we do our best to keep eyes on it as well. So she looks good. We'll leave you with that. But thanks for hanging along. Hit subscribe if you guys are enjoying the videos. We appreciate you being around, and see you on the next one.